Welcome back, Prealgebra. We're in lesson 78. We're going to talk about opposites. A while back, we talked about the number line. And we mentioned that 0 was the origin or the center of the number line. And we made a note that each side of the number line contained all the same numbers that are on the other side of the number line. The only difference being that one side was negative and one side was positive. So we could say that they are opposites of each other in a way. Well, not in a way. I mean, they are. They're opposites of one another. And because we say they're opposites of one another, let's look at them a little bit more closely. Like if I were to take number -3 and +3 and compare them, they both are the same distance from 0, but because of the side that they're on, because of the direction that they're moving, they have two different signs. One is negative, one is positive. That's not a 4, that's a 3. So we can say that the difference between these two opposites are their signs. And if you look carefully, to get from one to the other, the only thing that we have to do is multiply them by a -1. So -3 times -1 is equal to a +3. Whereas a +3 times a -1 is equal to a -3. So we can get from one number or one integer to its opposite by multiplying it times -1. Well, we know in algebra already that 1 tends to be an invisible factor. And we use that invisible factor a lot when we use negatives or the minus, right? So let's look at some problems, and keeping this in mind, let me clear the page. Let's look at this problem, 78.1. We have an opportunity here to use that invisible 1 as a factor to solve this problem. So we have negative, large parenthesis, negative, curly bracket, negative, square bracket, negative, -7. And then we just finish all the brackets up and close it out, right? So if we use that invisible -1, basically what we're doing here is we're saying I want the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of this number, right? Every time we multiply times a -1, that's what we're asking for. So really what we're doing here is we're saying -1 times -1 times -1 times -1 times -7. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 -1s in play here. Now, when we think about opposites, when we think about left and right on the number line, we go backwards and forwards. If we go to the left one space, right? And then we go back another one space. So the opposite direction. So we go this way the first time. The next time we go this way. Then we go another space backwards, the opposite direction again. And then the opposite direction again. Aren't we kind of stuck in the same? We're back to the same spot. Look at that. We're right back to where we were. So that tells me that whenever we have two opposites, it takes us back to the same point. So that is something that tells us that if we have two -1s, we're right back where we started. And that is another reason why a negative times a negative equals a positive. The same sign times itself is always a positive. We pair these opposites up together because they cancel each other out, and you're back where you started. So let me show you what I'm talking about on the number line. Okay, if we have -7 here and +7 here, and I say, all right, here's -7, right? I'm right here. And I say multiply that times -1. I want the opposite sign, okay? So now it's a +7. Now I want to do that again, another -1. So we're going to go back over here to -7. So now I want to do another -1. This one. We go back to +7. That's that one. Now we have another negative. We're going back to where we started. We're back to the beginning. We're back where we started, right? Because we had 1, 2, 1, 2. We paired them up. So let me write that out for you again. When we have pairs of opposites, they cancel each other out. So that means if we have an even number of opposite or -1s, then they don't count. They disappear. So you can take 2 opposites or 2 negative signs, turn them into positive. They're gone. 2 more, they're positive. They're gone. So then what you have in the middle, or what you have left, is your answer. So our answer is -7. See how easy that was? You just have to do them in pairs. Now, if you want, you can think of another way to mark that out. I'm going to rewrite it for you. It was negative, 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 -7. You could actually circle them. Okay, that's a pair, and that's a pair. So those are disappeared, and now you're still left with -7. Some way you need to figure out how you want to see it, and then cancel them out. But an even number, okay, an even number of negatives equals a positive all the time. And an odd number of negatives equals a negative. So if you look really, really close, we had negative, 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 -7, right? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is an odd number, so we had -7. If you remember this rule, or if you pair them up or cancel them out in 2s, it's still the same answer. It is still the same answer. It is whichever answer works for you. But I would urge you to remember that what you are really doing is saying -1 times -1 times -1 times -1 times -7. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are even, so they go away. You're left with -7. -1 times -1 is +1. So it'd be +1 times +1. Doesn't matter, still gives you -7. All right. That's 78.1. Let's do 78.2. If you haven't written this down, do so. We're going to do some more. So 78.2 is this. So we have how many negative signs? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's an even number. An even number of negative signs is going to be a positive 6. That's all you really have to do. You can pair them up and get rid of them. And then whatever you're left with is your answer. Or you can say -1 times -1 times -1 times -6. Right? -1 times -1 is a positive 1. -1 times -6 is a positive 6. Positive 1 times positive 6 is still a positive 6. Easy peasy. But if you get confused with all of these brackets, just do this. Just break it down into negative ones and then do the math that way, if that helps to simplify it. All right, let's do 78.3, and that'll be our last problem. 78.3 says this. All right, so we have a -1 here times a positive 1 here times a -1 here times a -4. So this would be, you can look at it and say, I have 1, 2, 3 negatives, which is an odd number, so that's going to be -4. Or you could say -1 times +1 is -1. -1 times -1 is going to be a +1. +1 times -4 is -4. Either way you do it, you're going to end up with the same number, even if you go the other direction. -1 times +1 is -1. -1 times -4 is +4. -1 times +4, still a -4. Okay? So again, even number of negatives is a positive. Odd number of negatives is a negative. And that is all we have for lesson 78. I will see you in lesson 79.